What we are getting now, however, is not the first way. It is the old, well-known second way, the European socialism. The decisive part of the transformation process, there were two main aspects, was the massive and wholesale privatization and a radical liberalization, deregulation and desubsidization of the economy. This liberalizing tendency lasted, to our great regret, only part of the previous 25 years. Partly due to the loss of our reform momentum for domestic political reasons, but mostly because of our approaching and finally entering the EU, we started a reverse process. That's why our economy and society is more regulated and subsidized and harmonized and standardized now than 10 to 15 years ago. The final blow came with the recent financial and economic crisis and with the methods of its medical treatment by means of a very extensive government interventionism. In any case, our society and our economy happens to be more regulated than we imagined in the moment of the fall of communism. We did not believe it could ever happen. It seemed to us that the government masterminding of the economy and society was so discredited by the communist experience of ours that it cannot return. We were wrong. We also assumed that everyone accepted that the government failure is inevitably much bigger than any imaginable market failure, that the visible hand of the state is always much more dangerous than the invisible hand of the market, that the vertical relations in society are less productive and less democratic than horizontal relations, etc. Again, we were wrong. It is undoubtedly connected with our entry in the European Union and with the fact how the EU is organized and how the EU functions. I have to stress that in the moment of the fall of communism, what we wanted was to go back to Europe. On the streets in Prague, in the moment of the Velvet Revolutions, the slogans were "Back to Europe." I was probably the first who tried to explain to the people in the country that the slogan "Back to Europe" means something else than "Avanti" into the European Union. So instead of going back to Europe, we went back to the European Union, and this is what we feel as a problem. It is quite evident that entering the European Union, we didn't become part of a healthy, prosperous, fast-growing economic era, and that we didn't become part of a truly democratic entity. We observe almost every day new and new proofs of the loss of our sovereignty. With growing despair, we witness the gradual reversal of our liberal reforms into a new era of omnipresent government regulation. I am afraid that Europe continues marching in the same blind alley now as before, regardless the deteriorating economic data, regardless the waning respect and position of Europe in the rest of the world, regardless the deepening of the democratic deficit we are confronted with, and regardless the undeniable increase of frustration of those who live in Europe and are object of this progressivist and constructivist experiment. We live in the era of economic stagnation. But the economic stagnation Europe is facing is not a historic inevitability. It is a man-made problem. It's an outcome of a deliberately chosen and for years and decades gradually developed European economic and social system on the one hand, and of the more and more centralistic and undemocratic European Union political institutional arrangements on the other. They both, and especially they together, form an unsurmountable obstacle to any further positive development. So I would repeat, what we go through is not an accident or a misfortune. It's a self-inflicted problem. It's a self-inflicted injury. Hundreds of small, at first sight, innocent details have metamorphosed into a serious systemic problem. I hope that all of that is well known to this fraction. At least no one is leaving the room when I am speaking, which is a pleasant surprise. So I hope at least this fraction of the European Parliament is aware of all that. And I hope and I believe that you will try to use your important political roles, political positions, to do something with it. So that's my dream, my belief. To discuss what to do would be a different topic, a different gathering, a different meeting. So let me stop at this moment, and thank you very much for the invitation and for your attention.